Welcome to Dave's Faves of 2020. And what a year it's been. Look at all the stuff that's happened. There was COVID. That's about it. But there were also some video games released this year, and many of these games I honestly could not give half a shit about. However, some of them were actually okay, and today I'll be listing my favorites. And before I start the list, I'll give my obligatory disclaimer that I'm obviously biased and that there were some good games that came out this year that I didn't actually play. And because I'm not a video game journalist, for the sake of credibility, I've only considered games I've actually played. So sit back, relax, and get ready to hit the unsubscribe button, because here are my personal top 5 games of 2020. Number 5. Doom Eternal. Some of you might be surprised to see this on the list on the account of the fact that I made such a negative review of the game, despite the fact that I said it's $100 in Australia bucks and that you should still buy it. And while I don't think that Doom Eternal was the absolute masterpiece that some people were making it out to be, it was still a good-ass game. Such a chaotic clusterfuck and a breath of fresh air in a sea of same FPS games. Doom Eternal has a great emphasis on making its combat fun and is underlined by probably the best soundtrack of the year. I do feel that it fell into the typical AAA pitfall of replacing actual gameplay with pre-made animations and cutscenes, but overall this is a highly polished game with an enjoyable amount of campaign, and while it's not my pick for Game of the Year, it's definitely earned its spot as a top 5 pick. Number 4. Half-Life Alyx. Despite how difficult it became to get my hands on a VR headset this year, I always knew I was going to do it, at least to play the new Half-Life game. Valve starved us and left us clutching at straws for so long, but it was almost worth it. The atmosphere and tone set by this game were incredible and unique to what we came to know from the original Half-Life games, a more gritty, unsettling and almost horror-like experience, and I'm a little bitch so I didn't particularly like that, but I still enjoyed the game immensely regardless. The gravity gloves were a fantastic mechanic, and shooting your way through zombies and Combine in VR was a lot of fun. The slew of generic puzzles did get to me a little, but the overall pacing of the game's narrative was great as well. I certainly won't discount the role that the game simply being in VR played to the overall experience, but it has set the benchmark for not only what is technically possible for a VR game, but what you can do with a story in VR. And for those of you not too poor to afford a VR headset, this should be a staple of your library. Number 3. Mount & Blade Bannerlord. I was really tossing up whether to put this second or third on my list, but I think the game still being in early access and with a slight lack of polish is what stuck it just under the game in second. But for long-time Mount & Blade fans such as myself, I think it's pretty hard to be disappointed by Bannerlord. This game is first and foremost a good sequel. It expanded on so many mechanics of the original game and introduced a slew of its own along with a drastic visual improvement. It kept the rather simple combat mechanics but simply upped the scope to make much more epic battlefield encounters. I really liked the new additions in scale to sieges, which were a lot of fun in both attack and defense, along with a far more appealing and intuitive UI and the new character and lineage additions that make the roleplay elements of the game far more worthwhile. Despite some performance issues and bugs the game had, many of which have since been patched out, it is still the definitive Mount & Blade experience, and I can only hope that it is even better by the time the final release rolls around. Whenever the hell that is. Number 2. Crusader Kings 3. Yep, I'm still a Paradox fanboy at heart. Call me biased and I'll agree with you, but Crusader Kings 3 was definitely one of my favorite games this year. Much like Bannerlord, I don't feel compelled to go back and play the earlier titles anymore, and despite it maybe not being quite as embellished as its predecessor with all of its DLC, there's still a lot to this base game, and it has made enough changes in regards to mechanics and features to truly cement itself as a sequel and not a glorified DLC expansion. Most importantly, however, it doesn't stray away from its sandbox and roleplay heavy roots, and if anything has embellished the latter to make interpersonal relationships feel like they hold more weight. Much like what we've come to know from Paradox, this is one of the best grand strategy experiences currently on the market. With a far more intuitive UI and a tutorial that was actually somewhat useful, I feel that CK3 is a great entry point into the grand strategy genre for those looking to break in. And what could be so bad about introducing more people to Paradox's long-term DLC investment fund? And finally, number 1, Factorio. I'm not sure of the last time a game gripped me quite like Factorio did. I played this game near non-stop for an entire week. I guess there's a reason they called it Cracktorio, huh? This game just beckons you back for more, to commit ecocide and expand your minds and machines to a behemoth of production and efficiency. The factory must grow. Factorio creates a really interesting sense of urgency as you contend with the alien inhabitants hell-bent on destroying you as soon as they get wind of the giant toxic cloud your factory is spewing out. It's a mix of many different genres that all combine to make one hell of an experience. There's such a satisfying sense of progression, and I had a great time tinkering with all the neat and useful tools and features while setting up my supply lines around the map. It's certainly not everyone's cup of tea, but for anyone who enjoyed tech at Classic, this is right up your alleyway. I had so much fun with Factorio that all I could really think about while making my review of it was why the hell I hadn't played it earlier, and I think that it has definitely earned its spot at number 1 of my favorite games of 2020. And there it is, my top 5 games of the year from hell. Do you agree with my list? Do you think I'm nitpicking and biased and they're gonna go watch Donkey instead? Either way, hit me up with a comment below with your top 5 games of 2020 and maybe consider hitting me up with a like too. I would also like to give a few honourable mentions for games as well. Firstly, Noita, which I hope for the sake of angry Finnish people in my comments I pronounced it right this time. This game was a lot of fun and had a really fresh and unique concept. It's also hit 1.0 since my review and I definitely recommend checking it out. Also, a quick special mention to Cyberpunk 2077, which despite what the internet has tried to tell me, is actually a game I'm rather enjoying at the moment. Buggy as hell, but has a lot else going for it. I promise that review is coming very soon as well, so stay tuned. And my last special mention is for you, if you're still watching. To anyone who is subscribed, watches my videos, or is still just here hoping I'll make a no whooper equals bad joke again. Thanks a bunch for any kind of support that you give to my channel. It's been a pretty slow year in all honesty, and I'm not gonna blame COVID because compared to most of the world, my life basically hasn't changed from it. In all honesty, I've just been lazy and it's not been good enough. But I'm all the more eager to improve next year, and I've got some new stuff lined up, so I hope you'll join me for the ride. So thanks again for watching, and make sure to stay tuned in 2021 for more funny Whooper Man content, and the next installment of Dave's Faves.